So, as I said a minute ago, if it's a RAW file, it will just automatically open in RAW when you open it and double click on it. If it's not, if it's a JPEG, go up to filter, and then it should have camera RAW filter about 4 down. Okay, then that will give you the camera RAW window. So just say get started on there. Okay, yeah? All right then, so as I said, we're going to crop the image to start off with. Press the green button up there, Demi, and then that will make it bigger for you. Okay, so I'm going to crop it first of all, so you don't need your command buttons, it's just literally just C, and it just highlights straight onto the crop button. For me, for this image that I'm using, I'm going to crop it so it's more like a panoramic. I've got this really, it is, you should do it. Just see. Mm-hmm. Oh, why does mine work then? Oh. Okay, if not, there should be a crop button at the... You haven't even got crop on there. Okay, hold on. It's a bit strange.
I don't have it either. Do you have it? No.
Maybe you've got a different... Have you got a different RAW? No, yours is a RAW 11 as well, isn't it? Yours just looks different than mine. Okay, do you know what it might be? Are they JPEGs?
Yeah.
Right, that might be what it is. So it might be just the fact that it's a JPEG file. So if it's a RAW file, it looks like it gives you a few more options. So not to worry, you can crop in Photoshop afterwards, okay? Yeah? So, you don't have to crop, I'm just letting you know this. So if it was a RAW file, so you'd be able to use the C button on it. So some of the little shortcut commands might not work, okay? So that'll be fun, won't it now? Follow me anyway on this, just in case. So as I was saying, I'm going to make mine a little bit more into a panoramic, just because I don't like my foreground. I've got some, it was a slow shutter speed and my leaves are moving in the foreground and I don't really like it. It's a bit distracting, so I'm going to just crop that out basically and just make it a little bit more, more interesting sort of format. Okay. You can press the enter button, it will crop it. And then then you're going to use your base. So this here, your first tab section. So if you go back to where the original one there, this one here, yeah. The first sort of window layout is your basic tab section. The first thing that we are going to do is we are going to saturate it. So at the very bottom you can see saturation. So we're going to desaturate it by bringing the saturation all the way down to 100%. Minus 100, okay? That's going to take it down to black and white for us, okay? Then you need to start thinking, and this is obviously going to be subjective to every single picture because it's up to you, but what you're going to do is you're going to play with your exposure, your contrast, your highlights, your shadows, your whites and your blacks so that you can sort of pull sections out of it. So for my image, it's a little bit underexposed, so I need to increase the exposure. So yours is a little bit overexposed, so you might want to decrease it. So depending on what it looks like, okay. Contrast, you know, the contrast for me, I need to kind of actually reduce a little bit of contrast in mine because if I've got too many dark areas in the blacks. Shadows, which will bring out the highlights, so that's going to be really useful for me because again I can pull back those the details in the trees of my picture. Therefore now I might tweak the contrast again now. Then the whites, because if I really blow out the whites, it's going to reduce my clouds, and I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to actually just keep them where they are, and then I'm just so you use your sliders to just move them around just to see and look at the difference of it. I think that's really, really important as you're doing it. Okay, yeah. Now, clarity is all about the details, yeah? So if you whack the clarity all the way up to 100, you'll see that the photograph gets very, very detailed. It's a little bit too scary, yeah? And not for what we want to do here. So pull it back by about half to 50 and see how you feel. If you feel like you want to give it a little bit more or you want to give it a little bit less, then feel free to. I'm going to set mine at 60 for this picture. Okay? It's about giving it lots of detail. It's about making it a gritty black and white photograph. So, you know, this is what we're going to do on this. Okay? And once that's kind of done, that's that first section done at the moment. Now, this might not work for you guys who have got JPEGs, so you may have to follow me for a minute, okay? Yeah? So, the next section is that I'm going to create a gradient filter. So, for me, my clouds, some of you might not have the same sort of look of a picture, so if you haven't got the same look of a picture, then just watch me for a minute. So what I want to do now is I want to add some more stuff to my sky. My sky needs a bit more oomph, doesn't it, really? Yeah, it needs something to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a graduated filter onto this. Now, if it's a raw file and you press G, it should automatically bring up the graduated filter option. Did it work? Yes? Oh, lovely. Okay, so it does work on JPEGs as well. So we're going to do a graduated filter. You need to make sure that overlay is highlighted at the bottom. Okay. And we're going to then play with the exposure again and the contrast to kind of add different contrast to it. Okay? But what we need to do is we also need to drag. If you hit the shift button, it will make it. So for me, I'm going to drag it just above my skyline there, like so. Yeah. So wherever your sky is, you might want to drag it. Hit the shift button at the same time, and it make it. You can twist it out as well. So if you needed to, if like say it's not like Demi's got one that's not straight, you can actually twist it. There you go. That's it. That's it. Go on. Let go. That's it. Because you're holding the shift button, that's why. There you go. And you should be able to pull the green one up a bit more, possibly. Let go of your fingers and just see where the green line is. Pull that up maybe. Keep going to the edge. That's it. Brilliant. Okay. So for me, I'm all right because I've got a nice straight line. So I can get my graduated sort of filter over. Okay. So then what we're going to do is then we can change the exposure and add some more sky into it. So if you just play around with it, we're just going to make it exposure. I'm going to add a bit more contrast because I want to give it a little bit more oomph. You might need to drag it down a little bit more if it's graduating it too much. I'm going to actually increase the blacks a little bit more as well on mine. Okay. So give it a moody sky. You can even add a bit more clarity if you wanted to into the clouds. If you wanted to increase your clouds a little bit more, which is what I'm going to do with mine. Okay. You can add more gradients to it if you want to. So if there's a certain section in your picture that you want to add another gradient into, so say like maybe if your foreground's not as, you need a bit more in your foreground, you could add it to your foreground, and by just pressing the N button on your keyboard, you could actually create a new gradient. So for me, I could maybe create a gradient just in the water of my picture. And I'm actually this time, hi Sarah. I just want to lighten it a little bit more. And I'm going to take out the clarity of my water because I want it to be a bit softer. So I've now created 2 layers. Sarah, we're just going to, if you can find a landscape picture and a portrait, and I'll go back over it. I'm recording it anyway. Okay. So now I've created 2 different ones. So you can create as many different gradients on the one page that you want to. So Lily's picture there, you might want to create a gradient on the bottom, but we don't have to just create gradients. What we can use as well is just like on the Lightroom, we can use an adjustment brush for fine adjustments, okay? So for Kezi's in that foreground there where your trees are, we can bring that back. For Demi's there, that tree is a bit dark, isn't it, in that foreground, so we can bring some of the details out of that. Same thing there for Liz's. Yeah, we can probably bring a few details back into it. So to do that, you need to press the K button. Hopefully that works. Yes. And it changes into an adjustment brush. If you scroll down to the bottom of the selection, you should be able to see that there is the size, the feather, okay, the flow, and the density. So it's really important at the moment. The feather is at 100, so it's nice and soft, yeah, the edges are soft on it. The flow, we're going to change to 50, or if yours is at 50, that's great, and then leave the density at the moment at maybe about 80, okay? Treat it exactly like an adjustment brush that you would use on Photoshop or something. And then the size, if you hover over your picture, you'll see that, again, you get a nice big circle. You can use your square brackets, just like you would normally on Photoshop, to change the size of the brush. And it obviously depends on the size of whatever you're using, depends on whether you need to go bigger or smaller. So for this, I am now going to just ever so slightly bring back the dark areas of my trees where I can't see any detail whatsoever. And now clicking along the whole line of my trees, you can see now that I have got all the detail back in my trees now. If you want to make something darker, you can do that as well, and all you have to do is press the N button again and you can get a new brush. So for example, I might want to see this bit of my sky here. I'm gonna take the exposure down this time, and this time I'm gonna add a little bit more drama into my clouds, so it becomes a little bit more intense. I can still also add some sharpness to where those areas are as well. And just keep going along until you feel like you're happy with the look of your picture, really. There's a bit too much light down here in my foreground that's distracting me. So I'm going to just paint in a bit of darkness in there, so I'm not paying attention to it. And then I'm going to do another brush because I've got a focus point, which is the bridge, but you can't really see my bridge. So I'm going to do another new brush, and this time I'm going to lighten up where the bridge is, so that becomes a bit more of a focal point to where I want to see what I want people to see. So you might want to lighten up a building on yours, Demi, or, you know, so just to give like a focus point. Kez, you might want to lighten up just on where your waterfall is, you know. So think about where you could like add a little bit. It's a bit like switching on a light and not switching on the light. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's adding those fine details to your picture. We get a little bit of this, and that's because it's a JPEG. So just for that, you know, so that looks awesome now, Lily. Fab. And so that from before had very little cloud definition in it, you couldn't really see it. That looks really good as well. I think we would just, for me, go back to the original. This is it, I get really confused. Let me go back to the original. The original one is, isn't it? I would probably give it a little bit more contrast. That'll do it. Lovely. Okay, so that is done. So then you can obviously open the image and it will open it into Photoshop, or you can obviously just click done and then that will do it. And there you go. So if obviously you had a JPEG, you'd want to open it into Photoshop now so that you can then crop the image if you wanted to. So you then, you know, just select the area that you want to maybe to give the interest to. Okay.